Well, every Wednesday on the Happy Families podcast, I have a conversation with somebody who has something to contribute to the way you're bringing up your kids, a way to make your family happier, a way to tap into the very best in you and help you to see the very best in your children. Today's guest is no exception. I'm really super excited to be able to spend some time talking today with Dr. Arne Rubinstein. Now, the conversation that we're going to have is actually part of the Bringing Up Boys Summit. And we had a whole lot of experts from around the world join us for conversations about what it is to bring up boys. But I think that you'll find that this content is useful, not just for parents of boys, but for parents generally. My sense is that hearing what Dr. Arne Rubinstein has to say will make a big difference in the way that you engage with your family. Stay with us. Dr. Arne is the CEO and founder of the Rite-of-Passage Institute. He has over 30 years' experience as a medical doctor, counsellor, mentor, a speaker and a workshop facilitator. The programs, the seminars and the camps that he's helped to develop have been attended by more than 350,000 people globally, while some of the largest schools in Australia have implemented his framework in wonderful ways. His programs are designed to support boys and girls to successfully transition healthy, safely into adulthood. His goal is to make rites of passage mainstream once again. Dr. Arne Rubinstein is the proud father of two wonderful young men and a mentor to many others. And he joined me for this discussion about why boys seem to be natural risk takers.
There's a reason for it. And when I studied rites of passage all over the world, what I discovered that extraordinarily, despite the fact that they never met each other, they all did the same thing. So they all did it at the same age, sort of when the boys were hitting puberty. And they would always be taken away. And there would be four elements that always happened. The first is that the boys get to hear the stories of the elders. They get to hear the men talking about their lives and the big things that had impact in their lives. And that's how they actually receive wisdom and knowledge, not by being told how to live their lives and what to do, but by actually hearing the stories. So stories were an incredibly important part of rites of passage. That was the first element. The second element is there's always a challenge. And there was always a challenge that pushed a boy to his edge. And actually, it did a couple of things. It actually made him face his own mortality and fear, and it humbled him. It humbled him, which is very interesting because if this is an innate need inside a boy, and if we don't create it for him, he will go and do it himself. He will push himself to a point where his mortality is challenged. And if there's no supervision, the danger is that he'll actually kill himself or badly injure himself, which, I not only did emergency medicine, I did retrieval medicine. And not all the young men even make it to the hospital. And so I actually believe that every boy is going to go through a rite of passage. The question is, are they going to create their own? Which, we hope is not too disastrous, or we're going to create something for them, which is actually appropriate. So, and then the other thing is, if the humbling doesn't occur, then they end up arrogant and entitled. And, how many young men do we know out there who are arrogant and entitled and think the world is there for them and it's just their role is to take as much as they can? So that was the first element, story. The second element, there's always a challenge. The third element is creating a vision for how you want to be in the future. What sort of man do you want to be? What's your role? How do you want to be in the community? And included in that vision is what are the things from your childhood that you need to let go of if you're going to become that man. And then the fourth element, I call it an honouring, or a recognition of spirit. And it's based on this idea that every boy is different and every boy is born with their own unique gifts and talents, their own genius and spirit. And one of the key things of a rite of passage is to recognise and bring out those gifts, bring out that talent, bring out that spirit. And they were things that were done. And so our challenge is then to make that appropriate for today, because we don't live in, the jungles of Africa or Papua New Guinea 200 years ago, the deserts of Australia. It's whatever we do has to be appropriate for now, and I can talk about that. But if we don't do those things, if we don't create a rite of passage, the danger is the boys do not evolve and end up becoming physically adult men, but still with the psyche, the behavior, boy, which is a disaster.
So in your book, The Making of Men, you actually talk about a world that runs on boy psychology.
Correct.
Can you just maybe, because I definitely want to get to these solutions and these ideas about what we can do, because I mean we're not going to send our kids out to hunt a wild lion in the forest just down the street here. What does a world running on boy psychology look like?
Yeah. So when I was doing the work, someone said, well, if you're going to talk about boys to men, you have to be able to define the difference. So I wrote a model, boy psychology, healthy man psychology. And boy psychology is what we typically see in a 6 to 8 year old boy. I'm the center of the universe. It's all about me, me. I want constant acknowledgement. I can't handle my emotions. If something goes wrong, I have a temper tantrum. I want as much power as possible. I'm going to live forever. I can never be wrong, never wrong. And I want a mother. I want a mother to be my servant, to do everything for me, to tell me how wonderful I am, to just be on call 24/7. Now, that's fine in a 6 to 8 year old. But if you imagine a man like a global leader or a head of community or a head of a family who still thinks he's the center of the universe, still thinks it's all about himself, wants as much power as possible, can never be wrong. When he doesn't get what he wants, he has a temper tantrum and wants a mother instead of a relationship, that's a major problem. And I actually think we live in a world that's run by boys.
I was about to say, isn't it great that all of the men who run various countries in our world, or who have done, isn't it wonderful that they've actually matured from that boy psychology?
That's right.
We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. But it's a serious issue when those men can push buttons that change the lives of hundreds of thousands or millions of people, or make decisions. Do we want those decisions to be for the best of the people or for the best of that person? And so healthy man psychology is I'm not the center of the universe, I'm part of a community. And power is not just for me, power is so I can do more good in my community. And if something doesn't work, I don't have a temper tantrum, that's actually domestic violence. I have to be able to stand with my emotions. And I'm not going to live forever. One day I'm going to die. And I'm not always right. I make mistakes. When I do make mistakes, I have to be accountable. And finally, I'm not looking for a mother. I'm looking for genuine relationship. And when I give my talks, which I do all around Australia and around the world, and I talk about this model, and I say, do any of the women in the audience know any men who still think they're the center of the universe, want power, acknowledgement, can't stand their emotions, are never wrong, and want a mother? And you see the women, and they sort of think, and they look at their husband, and they look back, and then there's this sort of this awkward shuffle, and we know exactly what I'm talking about here, and it's actually not okay. And all the stuff we're seeing in the Me Too movement and toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, and that's all inappropriate boy behavior from men, and it's not okay. It's completely not okay. And a big part of it is because we don't have the rites of passage to create this shift from boy to man.
You can't start raising a teenager once he becomes a teenager. Well, we shouldn't necessarily say that. We can still do some good, right? Yeah. It's never actually too late. But we've got parents of boys from 8 to 18 who are watching this. Many of them are actually watching it with their boys. In the book, you've got quite a lot in chapter 5 about how you can't start raising a teenager once he becomes one. So we need to start parenting young boys the right way to transition them effectively from that boy psychology into what it is to be a man. Where do we start? How does this go? Yeah. How does this happen? Because, by the way, you're not sending 8-year-olds out for these rites of passages opportunities. No. This happens as they're moving through their adolescence.
Yeah. No, look, that's completely true. And it is one of my sayings, you can't start raising a teenager once they become a teenager. So it does come down to parenting. And one of the things I've discovered, despite the fact that my main interest has been rites of passage, is there is a parenting issue. And many, many parents feel very lost and feel like they don't have a basic sort of guidebook, and they want to be the best parents they can, but it's hard because they're so busy, their children are so busy, there's so much technology available every moment, and there's not a lot of, I have found a lot of great guidance. So even though I do not want to be a parenting expert, I have found myself drawn into that sort of area. And we developed a model, and I can give you the link to send it out if that's okay on the thing. Great. And we talk about 7 strategies for building healthy relationships with our sons. And the first, and it's quite basic, but our experience has been that parents love this knowledge. And the first is finding something that you both enjoy doing together, turning off your mobile phone and doing it regularly. And this is for dads and mums. And it might be walking the dog. It might be going fishing. It might be listening to music. It might be having a cup of tea at the end of the day, whatever it is. But first of all, if you're going to have a relationship with someone, you have to have time with them. And extraordinarily, I find a lot of, especially dads, just never have one-on-one time with their children. That's the first one. I'll just name a few of them. The second is practicing acknowledging what they do well. So, if you see them doing something well or their gifts or whatever, you actually name it. It's very easy for parents just to tell their kids what they're doing wrong. And once again, especially dads, but it is very good to name the things they do well. Teaching skills of reflection. So when something happens, ask your child what they think about it first rather than just giving them the lesson. And same if they have a problem, getting them to see if they can come up with a possible solution or some ideas and then working with them on that. And then the last one I'll mention is that when something goes wrong, when they do something wrong, which will happen at some stage, separating the person from the behaviour. So, son, I still love you, but, burning down the house was not okay. Or, hitting your sister. Hitting your sister's not okay. We've got to talk about that. Or if they don't do well at school, rather than shaming them, saying, hey, what's going on? Because one of the things we know with boys is when they act out, often that actually means they've got a problem going on. So their way of expressing the problem is actually acting out. So those sorts of things, and we have like a wheel where we have all those things, and parents can give themselves a mark out of 10 in each of those areas and then join the dots. And, it's a simple thing. And the final one actually I will mention is sharing stories about when you were their age, including what went well and what didn't go well. And those sorts of things, it's just about building that strong, healthy relationship. Actually, there is one more, which I do need to mention. Keep going. Connecting privileges with responsibility. I can't not name that, because when we just give our boys everything, regardless of how they behave, regardless of how they are, and they become entitled, that's a problem. And from quite an early age, yes, we give them things, but if there's an agreement like, you'll take your dishes into the kitchen, or you'll tidy your room, or you'll, be home when you say you're going to be home, and the privileges come together with that, that's a very important lesson. Because if we don't teach it to them when they're young, as teenagers, when they're, 6 inches taller than us and big and strong and grumpy, that's not the time to be trying to sort of put in the boundaries. And unfortunately, I get a lot of phone calls from parents who say, I don't know what happened to my 12, 13-year-old son. Overnight, they won't talk to me, they won't cuddle me, they just go in their room and lock the door, and there's a war going on in the house. So, I think there's a lot we can do around our sort of early stage parenting.
Throughout those ideas that you've just shared, you've used Dad's and the importance of his role multiple times.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about, you've talked about rites of passage and the elders, the men go away, the elders spend time talking with the youngsters. And once again, you brought the dads in, the male role model. So there's 2 parts to this question. And I know I'm not supposed to ask 2 questions at once, but they flow together. The first is that, can you just talk about why dads are so important? But the follow-up is, there's going to be a whole bunch of single mums who are watching this. There's going to be a whole lot of families where dad is either not safe or not present, or for whatever reason wants to be, but maybe even can't be. We want to give dads the benefit of the doubt as often as we can as well. What do parents do in that situation?
Okay, so yes, thank you for bringing that up. Equally important, dads and mums, for sure. But the thing that we often find is that mums are so much more present, and these are generalizations, but very often the mums have, so much more to do, especially in the early years with boys. And we do have a lot of single mums who are trying to be mum and dad, which is very difficult. And one of our big recommendations there is for the mums to bring other men in, whether it's uncles, friends, grandfathers are brilliant, to bring that influence in. And what I also say to mums, there's a few really key things here, which is, not to put up with inappropriate behaviour from your boys. They've got to learn early that swearing at you, trying to hit you, any of that stuff is just not okay, and they need to learn that while they're with you in the house. It's a tricky one because you're right. Something like a third of boys are now being brought up by single mums and not having contact with their fathers. So anything we can do to support mums is really important. And I've actually got a chapter about that in my book. And those same principles with the mums of finding something you can do with your son one-on-one, sharing stories, separating the person from the behaviour, all of those things are as important, as well as doing whatever you can to have good men in the life of your boys. And we look at it as a community thing. So, I say to dads whenever I work with them, keep an eye out not only on your boy, but all the boys. The idea is we're sort of trying to create an umbrella where the whole community is looking after all the children. And that's part of our work that we do in schools, is trying to create community so that those who are on their own actually do have support.
If you'd like more of that conversation, you can find it in the Bringing Up Boys Summit. It's available in the Happy Families web shop. That's Dr Arne Rubinstein. Dr Arne Rubinstein is from the Rites of Passage Institute. You can find him at ritesofassageinstitute.org. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. If you'd like more information about making your family happier, you can find it all at happyfamilies.com.au, including the Bringing Up Boys Summit.